Let's talk about discourse because I went to a recent rally where Romney spoke in Northern Virginia, and there was a bus shuttling people there, and I was just eavesdropping on some of the conversations. But one of the people in front of me said, "This really isn't an election. This is a war on spirituality. Obama is not a bad guy, but he's driven to the dark side, and that's why we've got to go out and vote for Romney." And you hear a lot of and that's just one element. There's the same on the left.
Absolutely.
It's kind of this skewed view of things, and there's this schizophrenia in the United States in that we want stuff to get done in Washington, and yet as divided as Washington is, a lot of the voters are the same way, aren't they?
And I think you're seeing kind of this heightened rhetoric as well. I mean, when you hear words like war or battle or this, this candidate is evil and things like that. I can remember 10 years back, 15 years back, that type of just nastiness and viciousness among campaigns. It just didn't exist, that there was a certain platitude that most candidates, aspired for. We're talking about running for president of the United States, and we're demonizing the other side. And I think that it really has a trickle-down effect in terms of how the candidates' followers and supporters feel. I think that if you heard less divisive and vicious rhetoric coming out of the candidates and the campaign's mouths, you'd see less of it at town halls or on blogs or things like that.
But this is fueled by it. Don't you think the negative ads fuel this, don't they?
I think it's a kind of a cyclical process here. Everybody has their own microphone now. That's part of the beauty and part of the problem, I think, out there right now with American politics. Everybody has their own Twitter feed and their Facebook page, and so they have the ability to go out and really kind of broadcast their own feelings, whereas you used to have a few credible news outlets that would talk about campaigns and elections objectively. Now everybody's part of this process. Everybody has their own news segment, and I think that's kind of throwing gasoline on the rhetoric fire that we're seeing.
You touched on super PACs, and I want to kind of maybe touch on that a little bit more. Are they fueling a lot of this, do you think? And talk to me about the influence of super PACs in this election, because it's an immense amount of money.
From a mathematical perspective, it's just astonishing. Now, these super PACs, there are no limits on what an individual can give to these super PACs. If you're running for president, we just saw this in the Republican primary this year. Newt Gingrich, someone who was a distant third, fourth, or fifth in most polls, had several supporters, 6 to 10, that were writing $2 million, $4 million, $6 million checks at a time to these super PACs that was keeping him in the race, and really, I think, doing a disservice to eventual nominee Mitt Romney, because he was pulling Romney further and further and further to the right. Point being, you have a handful of individuals, 6, 8, 10, that are drastically changing the discourse of these campaigns. And I think for the negative. This country was founded on and has thrived on majority rule, and that's kind of how we've gotten by over these centuries. And now you're looking at 10 people or 20 people that have the ability to write these $5 million checks that are dominating the airwaves of a presidential election, our most important thing.
We've got about 45 seconds, but let me ask you about the total negative impact of this. Your father was an elected official. Is this going to drive people away from public service? I mean, does somebody really want to put themselves out and get vilified like this? And then the other aspect of that, is it going to keep voters at home where they just throw their hands up? Both of these guys are losers. I've watched all these ads. I'm not going to vote for anybody.
To your first question, I used to do a good bit of candidate consulting. I look at it now, the first question I would ask anybody if I was still doing it is, why do you want to do this? It's just astonishing to me that, we put people through this and why they would want to do this to themselves. So I fear that you're going to see people that are tremendously talented going into other sectors, going into the business community or going into the tech community, that would have been great public officials. I think it's a shame, because some of the greatest talent in this country we could use now more than ever in the political sphere, and I think that this is a huge dissuader that's out there.
And the voters staying home?
I think that people are going to continue to try to find new outlets for their political engagement, whether it's kind of these spin-off movements or, commenting on blogs, things like that. But, I think we're going to continue in kind of this downward spiral for a while.
Raymond Glendening, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And your thoughts.